Okay, students, we have reached the end of chapter 28, so you know what that means. Review time before the test. The test is Friday. Now, I'm going to attach the review sheet with this so that you can go ahead, print it, and then follow along with this PowerPoint, fill that review sheet out, or you can just take the review sheet, use your book, and fill it out that way if you do not have access to the computer throughout most of the day. But your test, again, is this Friday, so make sure you review and prepare for it. Also, make sure you study the map. You want to be successful in the map quiz. Let's just jump right in here, okay? All right, first one. Describe the Cold War. Well, we've learned quite a bit about the Cold War, but the answer or idea that we are looking for is competing and conflicting ideas between the United States and the Soviet Union that led to a buildup of military strength by both countries. Sorry, it looks like I missed the of. Okay, in what two ways did the U.S. try to dominate the Soviet Union during John F. Kennedy's administration? Why we built up both of our nuclear and non-nuclear military power, and we also became committed to winning the space race by placing a man on the moon for the first time. Okay. So who was the first man to walk on the moon? Why, that would be Neil Armstrong. Okay, which two locations did the United States refuse to back down against the Soviet Union? We have Cuba, and then we have West Berlin. Remember those two areas? Okay. What was the outcome of the Bay of Pigs invasion? Why? It's because the United States did not back the Cuban dissidents. That what happened is they got captured or imprisoned or killed. So that happened to those poor dissidents when they went to make their landings and suddenly found there was no U.S. support. Describe the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, that would be a standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. That was brought about because the Soviet Union decided to place some nuclear weapons over in Cuba, and we decided that we weren't going to stand for that. And so this is probably one of the closest moments in human history that we come to having a full-scale nuclear war. Okay, who was the president of the United States during the Cuban Missile Crisis? If that picture can't give you the answer, well, John F. Kennedy. Now you know. Okay, who is the leader of Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis? Hopefully that picture gives you a hint too, but if it doesn't, it's Fidel Castro. Okay, so what decision did the U.S. president, i.e. John F. Kennedy, make with first dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis? Well, what he decides to do is put a naval blockade around the country and threatens to search any Soviet ships that come within the zone and check to see if there's any nuclear material aboard. Okay, so in return, what did the Soviet Union want the United States to do before they would agree to remove their missiles from Cuba? Well, remember, the United States, we had nuclear missiles also in Turkey. So they wanted us to remove those missiles, which we did quietly after the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, so who built the Berlin Wall? I know this is going to seem like the key answer, but not the right answer. That's why I put both the answers on there. It's the Soviet Union / more so it was technically the East Germany. East Germany built the wall, but pretty much under the direction of the Soviet Union. Why was it built? Well, it was built because you kept having East German high-skilled workers escape and then move to West Germany. And so you started to see a intellectual flight from the east to the west, and they wanted it to stop. In contrast to the rivalry between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, one way for the United States to accommodate the Soviets was trading what product? Why, we sold them wheat. Wheat helped them overcome all those terrible outcomes of their state planning of how much food should be grown, because it often fell short. Okay, the effect of the Cold War during the Kennedy years was, well, it increased tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. You saw a massive, large-scale military buildup, and there was many confrontations between the two superpowers under the Kennedy administration. When and where was Kennedy assassinated? Well, he was assassinated in 1963 in Dallas by Lee Harvey Oswald, who was then killed by Jack Ruby. So we never really know what Oswald's motivations were. Most people think he was somewhat of a communist. Other people have other theories or views. What was the reason the United States expanded the conflict in Vietnam? Well, as we've been studying, they were engaged in a policy of containment to try to prevent the spread of communism, and especially in the region of Indochina. And so what they wanted to do was confront the spread of communism under Ho Chi Minh in Indochina and Vietnam specifically. And so we started to commit more and more troops. Who is the leader of North Vietnam? Ho Chi Minh. All right. Next, describe the Viet Cong. Those were the people in the south that supported Ho Chi Minh. So they are the southern Vietnamese that are communist supporters. And also they fought against the American troops and South Vietnamese troops. Over time, what happened to America's public view of the Vietnam War? Well, it lost popular support. A lot of it comes to the fact that there was no true plan of how to effectively end the war and reduce American involvement. Okay, who is the president at the end of the Vietnam War? If that picture doesn't help you on out, why, that would be Richard Dick Nixon. What was the final result of the Vietnam War? Well, the United States, North Vietnam, and South Vietnam signed a ceasefire agreement, and America finally pulled the troops out of the country, only to have the South government fall apart and North to take it over, and which still has a communist government to this day. What are the 3 examples of how President Richard Nixon changed U.S. policies towards China? Well, first and foremost, he replaced Taiwan as the official government at the UN. They still somewhat recognize Taiwan, but not quite. It's a tricky, difficult, sticky situation about how they're recognized. Secondly, he visited China, and then he also opened up trade between the 2 countries. What do the letters in SALT I represent? Strategic Arms Limitations Treaty. What was the purpose of the SALT Treaty? Well, it was to limit some nuclear weapons, but it also opened up additional talks in the future between the United States and the Soviet Union to continue to try to reduce nuclear arsenals. Comparative to the Cold War, the United States and Russia have significantly smaller nuclear stockpiles than what they did during the Cold War. Still enough to annihilate pretty much everybody on Earth a few times over, but significantly smaller. What was the purpose of OPEC? Well, OPEC made an oil cartel, and basically that oil cartel fixes the price of oil from major oil-producing nations in order to ensure that they are all profitable. It pretty much takes the element of competition out of the market so that oil prices do not dramatically rise or fall, and in order to protect their profits. All right, that's all there is to this one. Make sure you print off that study guide, study that map, and be prepared for the test on Friday. Have a good one, guys.